Joseph Stiglitz won in 2001 de Nobelprijs voor de economie en adviseerde de presidenten Clinton en Obama. Hij waarschuwde jaren geleden al voor wat er nu gaande is in Amerika.
How would you characterize middle class?
Shrinking. It's a shrinking middle class. It used to be that all Americans thought themselves as middle class. Nobody wanted to pretend to be poor, and everybody realized they weren't rich because the rich are really rich.
Right.
But and there's no easy definition. But I would have thought, the kinds of concept that I would have thought of related to middle class is a modicum of security, that you live comfortably, you have your own home, enough food, enough clothing, could send your kids to good schools, public schools. So you might call a comfortable life, but not really an affluent life.
Right. For an economy, how important is a middle class?
I think both for an economy and for social and political stability, the middle class is absolutely essential.
Right.
They are going to provide the people who will be, you might say, the workhorses of society, solve the complex problems, work hard. Really, the definition almost of what we mean by a functioning society revolves around the middle class.
Right. It's the backbone of society.
It's the backbone of society.
Right. Now, these days, in the economy, the American economy these days, is a middle class income enough to get by?
Well, it's a little bit hard to define precisely what you mean by a middle class income, but let's use the statistic, the median income. That's the household income that's right in the middle, half above, half below. What's remarkable is that median income today is lower than it was in 1997.
Right.
So, in terms of a successful economy, we are a failure.
Right.
There has been no growth for 12, 13, 14 years for most Americans. Now, is it enough? Depends what your aspirations are, but the style to which they have become accustomed, let alone the style to which they might aspire, is no longer affordable.
Right.
And so you see this reflected in more health insecurity. We have a system where you depend on employer-provided health insurance. If you lose your job, you don't get it. And 1 out of 6 Americans who would like a full-time job can't get one today. And part-time jobs typically don't provide that kind of health insurance. People face income insecurity because with more than 13, 14 million Americans unemployed. If you lose your job, you know that there's a long queue. If you're in the right area, you can get a job, but if you're not, at the wrong age, you face a real insecurity. To me, one of the things that's so striking is the statistics about food insecurity. How many Americans today have to skip one meal, not because they're on a diet, and their obesity is a problem, but because they can't afford it.
Right, and these are oftentimes middle-class people who work 2, 3 jobs just to keep their heads above water.
That's right. No, part of this is, you might say, a question of planning.
Right.
Partly it's the way we've organized our housing market and other aspects of our economy. So many Americans were induced to buy more houses beyond their ability to pay. They were induced to take out mortgages which had what we call teaser mortgages. What they were mortgages where your initial payments were very low, but then when you weren't looking, those initial payments soared through the roof. So they faced now the dilemma. Do they eat or do they give up their house? If somebody gets sick and they don't have health insurance, they have to make these hard choices. Do they give up their house or do they buy the health care that they need? So these are the dilemmas that increasingly middle-class Americans are facing.
And in the old days, or it used to be that it would be a one-income household. Father would bring home the bacon, mother would take care of the kids would go to school, and the next generation would be a little better off than the generation before that. Is that still the case?
No, there have been a couple changes. One of them is increasingly large fractions of Americans are households have two earners. In one way, that's good because it diversifies the risk. One can lose the job, the other can maintain it. But the problem was that their living standard was predicated on the assumption that both were working. So what happens is if one loses their job, then the family can't meet the style of life to which they have accustomed, not only accustomed, but to which they become obligated with their housing and their mortgage. One of the things that I find very interesting is the way that Europe and America have divided over the last 40 years. Question was, for thousands of years, people had to work to provide the basic necessities of food, clothing, shelter. And then with the improvements in technology, we had what we call a technology dividend. The question was, how were we going to spend it? And Europe went one way, when they said we're going to enjoy a little bit more leisure and more goods.
Right.
America actually decreased the amount of household leisure. The number of hours per household went up.
Okay.
And material consumption went up commensurately, but not in a flexible way.
Right.
So that they got used to this particular standard of living. Before the crisis, they went beyond their income. It was a debt-financed standard of living. So they were actually consuming beyond their income, their two-earner income.
Right.
And the banks encouraged this, the advertising encouraged this, the social context encouraged it. And now, the house is below, we call it underwater. The value of the house is less than the value of their mortgage. It used to be their largest asset. It's now become a liability. They can't get more credit, and they have to decrease their standard of living.
Right.
So the middle class is facing this dramatic change. Their income is going down, and before they were living beyond their standard of their income. Now they have to live below their income because they have to repay the debts that they accumulated.
And as you said earlier, that's a psychological thing as well, right?
Oh, it's really hard for people to adapt to a reduction in their standards of living, but it's beyond that because they have obligations.
Yeah.
And the notion of losing your house, and with that, your dreams. Now, these dreams were really a very important part of American identity, American psyche. Every generation was supposed to be better than the last generation. We thought of America as the land of opportunity, and everybody around the world thinks of America as the land of opportunity. And we have some wonderful success cases, and those inspire. But one or two examples don't really define what is really going on in society. You have to look at the statistics, and the statistics are dramatic. What they say is that today, America is less of a land of opportunity than it was 40, 50 years ago. Right. The chances of somebody from the lower class going into the middle class, the middle class going to the upper class, are lower. Right. Mobility is downward, not upward.
Right.
But the other dramatic aspect is, since World War II, Europe has become more of a land of opportunity. And the statistics suggest that today, America is less of a land of opportunity than old, we used to, Bush characterized as ossified old Europe.
Right.
So the irony is that here, old Europe has actually succeeded in providing opportunity, real opportunity, in a way that America is failing.
Right.
Now, not that everything is perfect in European
Europe,
societies either. You know that better than I do. But the fact is that these trends are very worrying in the United States.
Do you think, because the Obama administration has set up this task force, this middle-class task force, is the Obama administration doing enough?
Oh, clearly not. It's not doing enough. I mean, one of the hallmarks of the middle class is home ownership. And that was why the notion of trying to encourage people to have a home, own a home, was viewed as a step up the ladder to being a member of the middle class. Millions of Americans are losing their home. 7 million Americans have already lost their home in this recession, and we expect another 2 million to lose their home in this current year.
Right.
The Obama administration has not done enough to stop the foreclosures,
Right.
to stop the flood of people losing their homes. That's just one example
Right.
of how, we're talking about 9 million Americans that were aspiring to be the middle class are being shut out because of an inadequate policy towards restructuring mortgages.
Right. So they can't get a home, they can't move up into a home, and their kind of jobs, the producing jobs, they are being shipped overseas. In the last couple of years, the producing jobs have been replaced by financial services. That the percentage of financial services jobs has increased. So what kind of jobs are middle class jobs these days?
The real problem in the United States is middle class jobs for men. There are lots of jobs being created in the service sector and healthcare sector, in technology. Google has become a global name. So the parts of the U.S. economy are really very dynamic and doing very well. But a lot of where you might call the middle class male jobs, manufacturing, construction, those are the jobs that have been destroyed and won't be recreated very quickly unless we have, for instance, a new industrial policy.
Concluding, how would you call a society that has a very thin layer up top that owns, like this 1% that owns 40% of all the money, let's put it that way. And then there's nothing in between, and you have this vast number of people that are just making it. So there's no middle class. How would you characterize a society like that?
This is a dividing society. It's going to be it's the dividing society that, unfortunately, both for social, political, and economic purposes, a dividing society can't function very well.
But with all the respect that is due, it sounds like Africa. It's like a little tiny portion of rich people, and the rest has nothing.
Africa, Latin America. The interesting thing is the difference between what's happening in the United States and a country like Brazil. Brazil is one of the most unequal societies, but they recognized it. And about 20 years ago, under President Cardoso, they began a plan to educate, lift up the people at the bottom, create a vibrant middle class, move their society forward. And now there's broad consensus among the rich, middle class, and the poor that this inequality is unacceptable. So they've created, under President Lula, they created welfare programs, they improved education under Cardoso, and that's continued. They've created industrial policy to create jobs that are good for the environment and good for their economy. So they've created a national consensus to build a more equal society. Slow, but it's working in the right direction.
But are you?
Public education started 100 and some years ago when employers recognized, in part, that having an educated citizenry was really good for the economy. And they supported it. There was a period in which, more so than today, wealth mattered in politics. So they recognized that. And there again, it was an enlightened self-interest. And what worries me today is this enlightened self-interest on the part of many people seems to have gone.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.